They're gonna go for blood if the Spurs leave. So
I figured.
this is all they have. If the Spurs leave, we're gonna be like Laredo or El Paso. Like we'll have nothing. Nothing. They're already comparing her to Yolanda Saldivar.
I want to get your opinion on we talked about off air and what's been going down in San Antonio regarding a new arena. So, key our audience into what is Project Marvel and how does that factor into what is going on with the Spurs getting a new arena currently?
So Project Marvel is a very hot topic right now here in San Antonio. As you know, the San Antonio Spurs are the beloved team here in San Antonio, and this is all everybody in San Antonio has. There's no other professional sports team. There's no NFL team. There's no MLB team. There's no Major League Soccer team. It is just the San Antonio Spurs. And honestly, what other team would you want to be here than a dynasty team? This is a team that got an Oreo cookie. You see what I'm saying? Like this is a dynasty team. We want to keep the Spurs here in San Antonio. Spurs fans they love San Antonio. Now, the problem is that there is a new arena that people want to build. And this is for the Spurs. And quite frankly, I think they deserve it. And the reason why I think they deserve it is because, there's this misconception that the Spurs have had 4 arenas. The Hemisphere Arena, which originally was not theirs. Then they had the Alamo Dome, which is where they won some of their championships early on through their dynasty years. And the Alamo Dome essentially was not for the San Antonio Spurs. The Alamo Dome, which in my opinion is a horrible eyesore, and I've been saying it needs to be blown up respectfully with nobody dying. Just needs to be blown up, right? Because it's just an eyesore in the middle of downtown. People try to say that this arena, brings the Final Four, which is no longer going to renew their contract. Then they have UTSA games, which is a couple Sundays out of the year. This was supposed to be a multi-sport venue arena that was supposed to generate a couple $100 million per year more than what they're currently making right now. It does bring in revenue and it was paid in full. But the reality is that it never came into fruition what it was originally supposed to do, which was supposed to bring an NFL team to San Antonio. I say that to say the San Antonio Spurs were super accommodating and they worked with the city of San Antonio and they still held their games in the Alamo Dome to help benefit the city. So we can see that San Antonio and the Spurs have a history of working with the city of San Antonio to help generate revenue inside of their arenas. Then after they won the championships, then they were like, we rightfully deserve an arena. Our own arena for ourselves. They got the approval, right? But the problem at the time was that the Spurs didn't want, the Spurs wanted to be near the Riverwalk. I don't know if you've ever been to San Antonio before. Where are you from?
Originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but based in Denver, Colorado. So Nuggets country for me.
Oh, okay. So you are lucky you got all these teams, right?
Right.
Okay. So San Antonio, have you ever been? No, right? No.
I have not, no.
You have not. Okay. Highly recommend you take a trip out here. Everything's super cheap. Drive to Mexico, get your medication, come back. I feel like San Antonio's got great Mexican food too. You should come down. And if you do, reach out to me in advance so we could get together.
Will do.
But they wanted it near the Riverwalk, right? And the Riverwalk is downtown. I'm sure you've heard of the Riverwalk near the Alamo. They wanted it there, the heart of downtown. The problem was the leadership at the time wanted to develop the east side. So they were kind of like at odds with where the council members, there's 11 in San Antonio. The council members were at odds on where the Spurs should put the arena. The Spurs ended up settling for the east side. Now, if you look at the map, it looks like the arena is close to downtown, 10 minutes away. When you go to San Antonio, there's this big, huge railroad track and it splits the east side from downtown. So really, the arena's kind of out of the way on the east side. And the promise that the city made, not the Spurs, the city made the promise that they were going to develop the east side. That was the whole purpose. Have the arena develop the east side, kind of like the way, I don't know if you've ever been to Arlington, but they have a sports entertainment arena there and everything's like centralized. And that was going to be the original purpose, to kind of generate revenue to that part of the city, because the east side is the worst side of town, which I disagree with because I grew up on the east side. But that is the side of town where they needed the most development. They planted their feet there in San Antonio. And if you go to the Frostbank Center today, there's nothing around there. Literally, it's just like a train track and parking lots. There's nothing there. No restaurants. Like, I'm telling you, there's nothing around that Frostbank Center. Like, once people leave the Spurs games, they go home because there's nothing there. So nothing ever got developed. So those promises never came into fruition. So it upset a lot of people on the east side because the property taxes went up and all these reasons. There was no development. The promises that the city made were never fulfilled. But that's not the Spurs' fault, right? So now the Spurs are in a situation where they have leverage, because the Spurs got Victor Wembanyama as the #1 pick about 3 years ago, right? You see Victor, generational talent. I've personally been covering the NBA for years. I've covered the NFL. I've seen Caleb Williams in person when he was doing his, like these Shador Sand, these generational talents, these people that are deemed to be generational. And I've never, ever seen as much chaos as people have about Victor Wembanyama. So because they have that leverage with the generational talent, he ended up being Rookie of the Year. And then the following year, Steph Castle became Rookie of the Year, as well as pick #4 for the San Antonio Spurs. Plus, right around that time, the Spurs started doing games in Mexico City, Paris, Austin. They have a draw. So right now, the ball is in the San Antonio Spurs court, and they deserve an updated arena. Their plan is to have the arena by 2032 or 2035 is when it should be fully done downtown for Project Marvel. That means that the San Antonio Spurs have been on the east side, the part where nothing is going on, for 30 years. The Spurs have done more than enough for the city of San Antonio. As we just discussed, they've accommodated to the city, right? So now, in my opinion, thinking from a business perspective, it's time for you to accommodate to us now. This is what we want. We want to be back downtown. We want to have a downtown hub. We want to generate tons of revenue, and the city deserves that because it's going to generate more jobs, income, blah, 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 blah. The problem is that and I can see both sides because I'm a fair person. I don't know if I'm rambling, right? But the problem that people are having is that the former mayor, whether you like him or not, when they were discussing these negotiations with the city manager, the mayor is separate from the city manager. When the city manager and the financial team was having the negotiations with the San Antonio Spurs, nobody knew what the plan was, what was going on, until about a few months ago when the new mayor, there was a new sheriff in town, Mayor Ortiz Jones, and her promise was, hey, she was like, I want the Spurs to stay in her. She ran on the campaign. I want the Spurs to stay in San Antonio, but I don't want what happened in the east side to happen again, because the taxpayers footed the bill around the arena. So they are asking for taxpayer money for what is around the arena, which is $489 million. The Spurs are going to put up $2.1 billion, which is a good deal in my opinion. But the problem is that San Antonio now has a huge debt, and since Mayor Ron Nirenberg was in San Antonio 8 years ago, he came in at around a $1 billion debt deficit for the city of San Antonio. Now I think the deficit in San Antonio is like 14.6 billion or something like that. So it ballooned under Mayor Ron Nirenberg. So the problem isn't that the Spurs don't deserve an arena, it's the timing of it. Can the city of San Antonio afford this increase? And I think that's where the mayor's coming from, and that's why she's kind of like, wait a minute, the finalized term sheet, which shows the terms of what could possibly be in this agreement on what the city's going to provide, what the San Antonio Spurs are going to provide, that just came in on Monday. But the vote they're trying to push for a vote by this Thursday. So So it's like, wait a minute, we just got all this information. Can we negotiate something? That's kind of her stance, and the people who are against it stance. Like, they need more time, they need more information, they need more details. And then the Spurs side is like, well, we need to get the ball rolling because tariffs haven't came in. This is so political, right? There's no tariffs in. They have set contracts, locked in deals, and those are set to expire if it doesn't come through. So when they get the new contracts, it might be a little bit more expensive. So they are in a rush for that reason. Nobody has time to waste right now, and I think I can see both sides, and that's where the Project Marvel situation is at right now. It's pretty intense. Everybody's very passionate on both sides.
Sounds like it. I want to ask, what is the worst case scenario? Because I live in Denver. I am not a Broncos fan, but they have the football stadium here. They just put $100 million in a new scoreboard, and they get plenty of acts throughout the year. But yet they want to build a new stadium, and so if they don't build a new stadium, I've seen through the course of history what happens. The team leaves, and the Broncos are they're the number one team here in Denver, in my opinion. Even though I'm a transplant, I just see all the jerseys and everything. They are the main team here. So when you're talking about Project Marvel, I'm just wondering if this does not get worked out. Do you think there's a possibility of the Spurs leaving? I just can't imagine that happening. But yet I hear about what happened in Dallas, all these rumors about, them leaving, with everything going on with Luka and the new ownership. I'm just wondering, is this a possibility of them leaving San Antonio, or is that unrealistic? Do you think this will get resolved, do you think?
Well, I'm a never say never person, right? So I would say, never say never in this instance. But I do feel like because the vote to proceed to be is really up to the citizens at this point. But council has to approve the term sheet. If that vote is this Thursday, like it's supposed to be, there's 11 council members. Only 4 are against it. One of them's the mayor, and she has the biggest voice and can convince a whole lot of people, which is why this is a issue for people who are for it, right? More than likely, if the votes are 7-4, it's still going to pass through, and then it'd be up to the citizens. And I think the citizens do want this deal to go through. So I don't see them leaving. I just think it's a lot of very interesting drama. But I personally think the Spurs are going to stay. But let's just say something opposite happens. They have a right to leave. They are not bound to San Antonio. But they just built a $500 million practice facility, but I don't know how that would, factor into, what they have going on right now. But again, it would just be contingent upon, what happens in November with the voters.
So what is the temperature of the Spurs fan base? A lot has changed. Popovich is gone. All of a sudden, the Spurs just keeping it real, a little bit struggling over, I think, the last few years until. Yeah, now you got Victor, now you got all these new draft picks, and they're reloaded, especially in a very talented Western Conference. But yet the Spurs, I mean, we've seen what happened with the Houston Rockets. They went from zero to heroes, and I think with the Spurs, that is in their future. So with this whole stadium drama going on, what is the kind of the temperature of the fan base, you think, in terms of what the?
Oh, they're gonna go for blood if the Spurs leave. So this is all they have. If the Spurs leave, we're gonna be like Laredo or El Paso. Like, we'll have nothing. Nothing. They're already comparing her to Yolanda Saldivar.
Wow.
And as somebody in San Antonio who this is a male dominated culture here, I was again the first Latina in San Antonio to have a sports radio show, and I won a sports radio competition.
No.
Just based off my personal experience as a woman in media in San Antonio, I have also been compared to Yolanda, because you know what I mean? So like they're going to compare her to Yolanda. They're going to do all these things to just that's exactly what they're doing. They are just raking her through the coals, and she is not a fan favorite right now. And that is where we are at with that. They want to draw her blood. If they could draw her blood, they will. That's how they feel right now. They want to.
It
for their.
it sounds very intense. It kind of, I don't know, way lesser level because I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Like they have no pro sports team, but they do have a minor league soccer team. They're very passionate about United. They're in the middle of a whole deal with their stadium, and if they, I think it really hurt the community if they leave. So on a smaller level, I kind of get what you guys are going through, because they're going through the same battle now with their soccer team. Yeah, their minor league
Yeah,
soccer team.
and somebody on Spurs Twitter, the Spurs Twitterverse, they threatened to kill her. He got
Oh my
arrested. I don't know
goodness.
if you
Oh
saw that report that I put out there. Yeah, he
yeah,
threatened to kill her.
yeah, that's
And
crazy.
somebody told me to go.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been pretty bad. Yeah.
So let's focus on what's going.
Very fun to pay attention to, though. I just
Yeah, I just think it's like you get a life. Like I know it's sports, but like it's not that serious.
no, there is no life outside of the Spurs. That's how
Yeah,
it
crazy. Yeah.
is.
And that's kind of from a diehard sports fan.
Yeah.
Um, I want to focus what's on the court in last season and just what you have in terms of your opinion on the Spurs in terms of where they're going. A lot of roster reconstruction. Mitch Johnson taking over, really not only a Spurs legacy, but as an NBA coaching legacy of not only does what Popovich had to San Antonio, but the rest of just the basketball world. So, in your opinion, what happened last season with Wembanyama's just health, situation that he went through. Kind of, what's your opinion of last season? Do you kind of just, I mean, are there anything good you can take from it, or you just focus on this season? It's kind of a weird season because I think the Spurs had a lot of high hopes before Wembanyama dealt with what he had to deal with, and now it thinks like things are, you know, on the brighter side of things heading into this upcoming season.
At the beginning of the year, we heard something different that I hadn't heard the past couple years. For media day, Pop would come in and he would say, don't expect us to go to the playoffs. It's the first thing come out of his mouth for media day. But last year was a little bit different. The players for the first time that I could recall were like, we go into the playoffs. And so I was like, oh, and it felt like a different energy. They had gotten a veteran presence like Chris Paul, which they did not have that Wemby campaigned for prior to last season. So when the season started, they were actually on a high note and they had a winning streak. And Jeremy Sohan was making an emergence as one of their strong players during those first several games. Devin Vassell was injured coming into the season. And even without Devin Vassell, who was arguably, depending on who you ask, their number 2 guy on the team, they were still winning. And what had happened was Devin was out, then Jeremy went out. I think he had got a finger injury, if I'm not mistaken. And then they started kind of like losing that balance in a sense. Right after that is when the situation with Coach Pop happened and he had his stroke, right? So he had his situation happen. Coach Mitch Johnson then stepped in as the interim head coach, and that changed the landscape of everything that was going on. So once Mitch comes in, people are like, is Pop coming back or not? That was a whole deal. Then after that, then they traded away Zach Collins and Trey Jones, brought in De'Aaron Fox, which was a great addition. But then right after De'Aaron Fox comes in, that's when Wemby goes out with his shoulder injury or the blood clot in his shoulder. And after that happened, then I believe they had like a slight emergence, especially with Keldon Johnson when he was coming off the bench, but he was a starter and he was performing really well at that time. So if you look at the pattern when the team was healthy, they were actually performing really good. The problem was that they were struggling with not only their own health and their own injuries and their own transitions, but also the health of the head coach. And you're in the situation where you have an assistant coach being an interim head coach for the very first time. And obviously, he's going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes when they first start. You're never going to come out guns blazing being perfect. So I think that was all a transition period. It was all an adjustment for the team. But I'm firm on the stance that when they were healthy and when they did click, they were on. And I guarantee if like the season didn't go the way it was going, I think that they would have been up above 500, and I think they would have had a winning record because they were very, very close to it. But then, fortunate circumstances ended up happening. Luckily, De'Aaron Fox, who had his injury as well. I can't remember what it was around. Was it wrist or whatever? He ended up getting his surgery right after Victor went out, so they can kind of like knock that out the park for this upcoming season. So they're both already healthy and ready to go. But I think the addition with Dylan Harper, who Ron Harper, my babes, Ron Harper's child, you already know what you're getting with that. And the addition of Carter Bryant, and De'Aaron Fox is back. I think they're going to be much stronger this year, and I think I'm excited to see what they do. And I think that Mitch Johnson, given what he was given and in such a short notice, he did well for what was given to him. And so I'm looking forward to see what Mitch Johnson does in his tenure. It's going to be fun to watch.
So, last Spurs question: what is your expectations for this season? You think?
I don't have any. I don't ever have expectations. Because I get held to that standard, and I ain't there yet.
Makes sense. Makes sense, especially in this.
I always like to make my predictions like a week out, because I need to know what, like, who's injured. Like, I got to. That's the type of person I am.
That makes
But
sense.
I think it will be better than last year.
Makes sense. There's also a lot of parity too. I mean, the NBA is wild these days, so it's really hard to predict. Except for the Chicago Bulls, I know they're going to be terrible, so I will make that prediction now. That's my team.
Hey, that was my team back in the day, and I don't appreciate that. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't care. I'm just joking. I don't care.
I want to shift to your wrestling background and just how you got involved being a color and commentator for Reality of Wrestling. I'm a huge wrestling fan. I follow the major promotions, the minor promotions. I follow it all. I think Booker T's done a fantastic job with Reality of Wrestling. So can you just talk about your involvement with that promotion?
So what had happened was, when I was in sports radio several years back, a guy in San Antonio named Brandon Oliver ran a promotion called River City Wrestling, and he wanted me to be a guest GM. I showed up as guest GM, and then he was like, I want you to be the ring announcer. And then the rest is history. I ended up being the ring announcer for River City Wrestling, and it just kind of like spiraled into what it is today. And I think that my career as a woman in sports has had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of, this is a tough business to be in, you know what I'm saying? And it's very competitive, right? So I feel like I always had like these like highs and lows, right? But it felt like it was like a lot of lows at some point. One of the things that wasn't a low for me was always wrestling. And one day something just like clicked in my head, because sports radio is primarily a certain demographic, and double minorities like Latina women like myself, we're less than 1% on sports radio. So you can only imagine, me trying to be successful in sports radio was like swimming against a current. That's kind of how it felt, like just constantly just like trying to like break through, and it got emotionally exhausting. And one day it just clicked to me, and I was like, you know what, why am I going against the current when I could ride the wave? Like, I want to go where I'm accepted, where I have good experiences, blah blah. And for me, that was wrestling. So I never had a bad experience. As I started to work more in wrestling, I started developing this passion and love for the sport. And I really think that out of all of the, and I firmly believe this, out of all of the sports that I have ever covered, the most real sport is wrestling.
Huh?
It's very true.
That's
And you have to work. I don't know if you see that, because you enjoy wrestling, as a spectator. I don't know if you're in the scenes behind the scenes, but that is how I feel. The wrestling is the most real sport. And I don't know if you watch Unreal. Have you watched Unreal?
I have. Yep.
I'm telling you, bro, it's really real. And I feel like, the opportunities I get are just like a blessing. And the fact that Booker trusts me to be his lead commentator on Reality of Wrestling is a huge honor. And I'm just very grateful for Booker, Queen Charmel, and the Reality of Wrestling team, Brandon Aller from the River City Wrestling. And I'm just very grateful. I can't even believe I'm in that situation. So it's just a blessing. It's a dream come true. And I just love the storyline, watching the shows and just being fully engulfed, with that team. It's a really great team, and I feel really blessed. I will say that to be there because it's so great. I love it.
No, that's awesome.
Hmm.
I find with the wrestling media space, I feel like it's very diverse. I'm also a big MMA fan, and I feel like within boxing and mixed martial arts, it's turned into one demographic nowadays.
Right.
Whereas I think with wrestling media, that has changed to my surprise because it was not that way. Um, back in the day. But currently, I think that has changed. What do you account that for? Because I think nowadays there's so many diverse voices within wrestling, so many ways to interpret wrestling, on the internet. Why do you think that is nowadays, just in terms of how it's opened up to different flavors? I mean, you have, journalists asking, what's your favorite Waffle House order, to, Botchamania, to people that do more serious journalism in terms of stories. Where do you make of kind of just the wrestling media space these days? 'Cause I think it's very diverse in 2025 compared to other sports, like you were saying, where it's just so, I think, narrow-minded these days.
So, for clarification, like me being in wrestling, I was intentionally never wanting to do media. People have always asked, like, why have I not covered media for if I'm a media person? I intentionally do not want to be in media because I want to be seen as production. And that helps me kind of like carve that I am not media, but I have that background, but I definitely am more like production in that realm with combat sports. But that doesn't take away from what you just said and the accuracy of that. I feel like, it is extremely diverse for wrestling because, like you said, you've noticed and same, right? I can tell that the demographic is a little bit different. And I really think it really all boils down to just the WWE is the standard, and AEW, these companies are the standard and they get it. And I think the NFL gets it now too. I covered the Super Bowl and there was a like it's getting extremely diverse and they're giving opportunities to people who are podcasters, which is something that the NBA hasn't fully grasped onto yet. And I think, like I said, with when I was in sports radio, there was a specific demographic, so they're the ones that are carving out the stories and carving out the lanes. But because the NFL and the WWE have done research and understanding that certain demographics cannot necessarily be as successful in these certain realms, and they have to find their other angles, like in podcasting or whatever, or creating their own sites and stuff like that, to give them these opportunities to be more diverse. It actually, like, that's where the diversity comes in because they're so open-minded about those numbers and those people creating their own platforms. If you put in the work, if you have the credentials to back you up, you should be able to cover it at a high level, even if you don't have four letters behind you. So I really like the fact that they're open-minded to that. And I also think that is a great thing for the sport of wrestling. And I really think it kind of like benefits them in the best way because if you look at other sports and the media and the business that they bring in, the numbers are less. And the WWE and wrestling, they're just like dunking on everybody
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a
because they're so
powerhouse.
united. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Carolina, thank you for the time. Truly appreciate it. Can you let our audience know, again, where you at on all your social media channels, any upcoming projects, anything you want our audience to know?
You can catch me on A Reality of Wrestling Platinum on their YouTube channel. I am a commentator alongside my broadcast team, Brad Gilmore and Chris Russo. And you can also find me covering the San Antonio Spurs. My blog is Spurfect, not spurfect.com because that is an X-rated site. It's spurfect.substack.com. And I have a great team of writers, and you can find me on social media at Carolina Teague Sports. But on Twitter, I am CT the Mic Slayer, and I hope to be back soon. You did a great job.
Appreciate it, Carolina. Good luck with the Spurs. Good luck with Reality of Wrestling. Appreciate you making the time. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.